Alright, in this video we're going to look at entities and symbols real quick. Okay, so we're going to create a new file called 10 underscore, and let's just call this entities.html. Okay, so we're going to put in our boilerplate. Let's say entities. So the first thing I want to show you is a non-breaking space. I'm going to put a comment here and say non-breaking space. So if I put a paragraph and I say, hello, my name is Brad, and I run this in live server, or you open your web page, so we just have a paragraph that says, hello, my name is Brad. Let's say that I wanted to put a bunch of white space. Okay, so where you see no text, it's called white space. Let's say I wanted to put a bunch of it in between is and Brad. Like if I go over here and I just put a bunch of spaces like that and I save, there's no difference. Okay, it doesn't, the browser is not going to see these spaces and render it like that. If you wanted to do that for some reason, and there's not too many cases where you would do this, but if you did, you could use a non-breaking space, which is an HTML entity. So it's actually going to be ampersand NBSP semicolon. Okay, remember in the last video at the end I showed you the copyright entity, which was ampersand copy semicolon. And you can look these up on W3 Schools. You can find a list of all the entities, symbols, and stuff like that. But let's go ahead and save this, and you see how it knocked it over a little bit? If I go ahead and grab this again and put another one, let's put a couple of them, and save, it'll keep pushing it over. So if you ever need to push a line over like that, you can use a non-breaking space. So next thing I'm going to show you is how we can use, or how we should use angle brackets. So greater than and less than. Obviously they're used in HTML tags, but what if we wanted to actually put them in the HTML page? Let's say greater than and less than. So put a paragraph and let's just say 5. Maybe this was a page that had some math equations or something. We'll say 5 is greater than 2. If we save that, it does actually show up on the page, but in some browsers it can actually get confused because it looks like the beginning or actually the end of an HTML tag. So usually when you do this, if you want to actually put an angle bracket displayed on the page, you would use the entity ampersand GT semicolon. Okay, GT is greater than. So let's save this and you'll see that it renders the same thing. Okay, if we wanted to do a less than, let's actually we'll just copy this down, and let's do 1 is less than 2. We could use LT. If I save that, you'll see 1 is less than 2. There's also numbers for entities as well. So I'm just actually going to copy this down again, the greater than, and instead of doing GT, I'm going to do number 62 and save, and notice that it again gives me the greater than. So the number for less than is actually 60. So we would do ampersand number sign 60 and save, and you'll see it gives us the same thing. Now in most cases you're going to use the greater than and less than, but I just wanted to show you that you can actually use the number. Okay, we already saw the copyright, but I'm going to put it in here anyways. So we're going to do ampersand copy semicolon. This is the one that I use frequently. We also have the trademark. So let's do ampersand, and this is REG. And if we save that, you can see it gives it, oh, not the trademark, the little R. If we want to do like currency stuff, dollar signs, pounds, stuff like that, we can do, let's see, for, well, obviously dollar signs, we can use the actual key, but let's say we want to do cents. We could do ampersand cent, save, and it gives us the little cent sign. Okay, we can also do, if we're working with foreign currencies like pound, oops, do pound, we can do yen, we can do euro. If we save that, we get all those different symbols. We can even do suits, like card suits. Okay, such as spades. So if I wanted to do ampersand spades, semicolon, there we go. And of course we have the other three. So if we want clubs, hearts, and diamonds is actually DIAMS. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you're probably not going to use these very much, but I did just want to show you guys it. Also, if you want to display something in like computer code font, you can use the code tag. So let's say computer code. So let's say code, which is a tag. And let's say we wanted to display PHP. Okay, it's PHP code. Now in PHP, you start your code with this right here. This is an opening PHP tag, and this is a closing PHP tag. And you could put like echo, a string, hello. And I don't expect you to understand any of this, but let's say we wanted to display this on the page, and we wanted it to look like code. So we would replace this with the entity of less than. So we'll do ampersand LT semicolon, and then let's replace this with ampersand GT semicolon. And we'll save that, and now down here, notice that it actually looks like code. Okay, so if you wanted to put a code snippet into your page, maybe it's a programming site or something like that, that's how you would do it. There's also a tag called KBD for keyboard. So if we wanted to put like a paragraph and we were giving instructions to say save the file by pressing, and let's say we were telling them how to save a file, so Control S, we could put a KBD tag and we could put in CTRL plus S. We'll do yeah, like that, and save. And now save the file by pressing Control S, and notice the Control S is kind of it's in that computer code font. Okay, so it's again not these aren't things that you're going to use all the time, but it's something that is good to know. And again, if you want to look at all of the different entities and symbols available in HTML, you can go to the W3 Schools. It's like I said, it's a great reference site. All right, so in the next video, we're going to start to look at HTML5 semantic tags. Alright guys, so before HTML5, we would put everything in divs, much like you saw in, not the last video, but the one before that, where we had an ID of main header, we had an ID of main nav. With HTML5, we got semantic tags, like header, footer, nav, so we can actually describe what is in that tag. Now, this isn't just for organization, although it is excellent for organization. It's also for accessibility. It helps people with disabilities that have hearing disabilities, vision disabilities. It helps them understand what goes where. So they're very important to use instead of just using divs, which have no meaning at all. So these are the more popular HTML5 tags. There are a couple other ones, but these are the main ones. And then I just have a sample that I found on the internet that kind of shows you what goes where. It's not using all of these, but I'm going to explain each one. So basically we have header and footer. That's pretty self-explanatory. As you can see here, headers usually go at the top, footers usually go at the bottom. A lot of times your header will have like a logo. You may have your navigation in your header. You may have it underneath. You may have like a search box or something like that. Next we have nav, which is used for navigation. I don't have an example on this, but let's say you have a nav bar here, which would be a UL, an unordered list, and then you'd wrap it in the nav tag. Okay, or maybe you have a side menu, which is a UL that you wrap in a nav tag. Main, which also isn't on here, could be wrapped around this whole area, which is like the main content of the page, or maybe even around this whole thing. There's no like special science to this. Some of it is preference, but there are just some general rules to follow. It just generally means the main content of your page, and a lot of times people don't even use main. They'll just split it into sections. Yeah, you can use main. Section is going to be just that. For instance, the about div that we had and then the contact div, that's where I would use a section. Instead of using a div there, I'd say section and maybe still give it an ID of about or whatever. And then article is going to be used for just that. If there's an article post or a blog post, a lot of times you'll see multiple blog posts and then maybe a read more button or something. Those could be wrapped in article tags, okay, instead of divs. And then aside is just that. It's sidebar content or just content that it's not the main focus of the page. It could be maybe an ad, or it could be like a category section for the main blog section, something like that. Okay, so these are the HTML5 semantic tags. Now I'm going to give you a little challenge, and I want to give you a layout that only uses divs, and I want you to figure out where to put these semantic tags, okay, all the ones that I just showed you. So let's go ahead and create a new file here. We'll call this 11 underscore HTML5 underscore semantics.html, and you're going to have this HTML file in your project files for this video, and I'm going to paste it in. And it does have a bunch of CSS up at the top in the style. Don't worry about this. I just wanted it to look like an actual web page. We're going to learn how to do all this later on. But just pay attention to the HTML. So I'm going to save this and open it up just to see what it looks like. Okay, so it's not very good looking, but it is laid out like an actual website. So we have a header, we have our main area, we have this section here, this section here. We also have some articles in the section, and then we have our sidebar with a navigation. So keep that stuff in mind. Keep those elements in mind, and let's look at the HTML. So we have a div with the ID of header, right? Down here we have a div with the ID of main. We have a div with the ID of welcome, and the comments should give you hints as well. Welcome section. We have the blog section. We have article 1. Article 2, but notice that they're all using divs. So I just want you to figure out where the HTML5 tags go. We have a sidebar. Inside the sidebar, we have our navigation, and then we have our footer. Okay, don't worry about this clear. This just has to do with the floats. We just floated using CSS, so we had to clear it. Don't worry about that. So just take a look at this and take a look at this and figure out what goes where. Okay, and I'll even do the first one for you. So for header, we have this div. So what I would do is replace this with header, and then the ending tag also with header. And we can keep the ID. Okay, if we were going to style it or something, we could even style it just by the element itself, but you may want to keep the ID. But that's the first one I'm going to do. So take a look at the rest. And I want you to replace certain divs where you think they should be replaced with these HTML5 semantic tags. Okay, and then in the next video, I'll give you my solution. All right, guys, so in the last video, I gave you a little challenge. I wanted you to replace the certain divs with HTML5 semantic tags to just make it more accessible, more organized. And I did the first one for you, which is the div with the ID of header. So we use the header tag here. So the next one is pretty obvious. We have a div with the ID of main that goes around, let's take a look at the project, goes around all of this area, which is basically the main content of the page. So that would be replaced with the main tag. So this ends, like I said, you can click on a div and it ends here. So we want to change the ending div, and we want to change the starting div. Okay, so that's the first one. Next one is going to be in here. We have the welcome section, which ends right here. So this is actually going to be a section. Okay, so we're going to change that, and we're going to change that to section. Next, we have the blog section. Now this ends right here, so we're going to change this to section and change that to section. Now within the blog we have some articles, so div with the class of article, so these are going to be changed to article. I'm going to I'm going to select the div right here and then do a Control D. I'm also going to get the next one and the next one. Okay, so just some shortcuts here. We're going to change all of these to article. Okay, so the next thing is the sidebar. Now remember, a side is for content that's not the main content, but it's on the page. We have navigation, we have contact stuff here. So we're going to grab this div right here along with the ending div and put in a side. Now the UL, the way that nav works is we don't actually replace the UL, we wrap the UL in a nav tag. So let's say, oops, let's do nav, and then we'll grab this, and I'll just hold Option or Alt and then the up key and just move it up into the nav. Okay, and then the last thing is going to be the footer, which I want to replace the div here with footer. And let's save, and if we take a look at the result, it looks the exact same. Alright, so if any of what we've talked about has been confusing, don't worry about it. We're going to be doing this stuff all along throughout the course, so you're going to get the hang of it. If what we've talked about has been painfully easy for you, don't worry about it. Things are going to get more complicated. I just want to start from absolute scratch for people that have never even written a paragraph tag before. So hopefully both sides are somewhat satisfied. Hopefully that you're starting to get it if you're an absolute beginner, and hopefully I didn't bore you to death if you're a more advanced front-end developer. All right, so in the next video, or I'm sorry, in the next section, we're going to jump into CSS basics. So we're going to start to talk about all the basic properties for colors and padding and margin and the box model. We're going to look at things like positioning, different types of positioning, relative, absolute, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's it. I'll see you in the next section.